from the tragedy in Newtown. We're joined this morning by Wendy Patrick. She's San Diego State lecturer and also a workplace ethics expert. Good morning, Wendy. Thank you for being here. At first, I mean, I know a lot of people, when they heard about this, the conversation is still asking people, like, what was your reaction and how has this affected you?
You know, I think that this really, more than some of the others this year, has really hit home emotionally for many Americans. We see here some things that have come together that were absent from, thankfully, absent from some of the other shootings. This actually was a 6- and 7-year-olds, started with killing his own mother. There were just emotional aspects to this that really distinguish it from some of the others. Nonetheless, we step back and say, okay, now what can we learn? What can we learn from what happened that'll help us on an ongoing basis? A couple of things that stand out in this particular one. Obviously, you know, it reignites the gun laws debate.
Yep.
We've seen that. We've also seen more emphasis being put on the mental health aspect. What can we do to lessen the stigma of seeing a therapist or seeing a psychologist? Many people are saying, you know, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to talk to a therapist if in fact there are issues. Maybe some people are arguing, maybe many students it should be some kind of a mandatory requirement that at the very least, if there are perceptible signs and symptoms of something going on, that you at least have a conversation with someone at the school level. That conversation has been reignited with a lot of force given given what we are now hearing about. They're tossing around terms again like Asperger's, autism, some other disorders that are very misunderstood. And we're suffering from the same kind of misinformation as we have in the past with some of the other killings, especially some of the shootings we've seen in 2012. People all of a sudden want to learn more about what these disorders actually are, how can we detect them, what are the signs and symptoms.
That's one thing that I want to talk a little bit about, those red flags, because you know, I was reading a lot over the weekend, and one thing that I learned is, given what happened, compared to what we do on a daily basis, it's such a small chance. Like, you don't want that to obviously happen to anybody, but this fear that's being created, now you go out and you're looking around and you're looking, okay, what's that person doing? What's that person doing? Why are they acting like this? So what are those signs that you look for? I mean, from what we're learning with this person, Adam Lanza, some of those signs, should they have been caught? Were those the signs?
We look for some of those signs after a tragedy like this for a little while. And then we all sort of let our guard down and go back into go back to our iPhones and don't pay a lot of attention. It's a great question you ask, because the signs and symptoms are different, as the psychologist will tell you, for a lot of different disorders. You know, you have things like explosive disorders, you have paranoid disorders, you have schizophrenia. I mean, there's so many different kinds of mental disorders that could potentially lead to aberrant behavior. You almost have to know a lot about the different disorders themselves to know what particular red flags go with each.
I think some people, though, are asking, though, because there are a lot of people, what seems to be a commonality between all of them is that they all seem like they're unhappy with something in their life. I mean, from even the shooting that happened at the Newport Beach Mall over the weekend, the gentleman was venting, this man was venting on his life's problems. So if you know that, because there are a lot of people that are not happy with life.
That's right.
You probably know a lot of people. What pushes them over the edge? Like, how do you know then that this could be somebody that is dangerous?
You know, sometimes you don't. That's the scary thing about all of this. You want to obviously look for patterns, and we're now seeing some, sure enough, that this young man exhibited. Withdrawn, nobody ever saw him, which was very unusual for a small town environment like this town was. Everybody knew each other's kids, and some of the people that lived on his block said, we never saw him, much less knew him. So you want to look for things like isolation, like being withdrawn. Some of the behaviors he exhibited at school, now again, they were signs of withdrawal and signs of really being socially awkward and inept, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Right.
We all can remember people like that. People are now talking about the lack of a social media footprint. Now that's really a sign of the times, isn't it?
That he didn't have a Facebook page.
A lack of a social media footprint is a red flag. It's almost expected that you're going to socialize both online and offline in today's society. I just find that an interesting aside about where we've come, that most of us use at least email, and we at least have friends that we communicate with other than in person.
You know, Wendy, one other point that I wanted to bring up, I mean, obviously after the tragedy on September 11th, the way that we travel and the way that we live in this country changed forever. When we see shootings like this happen at the mall, that happen at the movie theater, will this change those things that we do on a daily basis, to go and have metal detectors at schools, and before you go into, you know, the movie theater, that they're, you know, swiping you down, making sure that there's nothing on you?
You know, people that are very cautious by nature will continue to be so. People that are not will not. You know, you remember after the Colorado shooting, there was a big push to get back into the movie theaters by people that stated they're not going to be paralyzed with fear because of the behavior of so few. One thing that's changing as time goes on is it's more and more. It's not just so few. Perhaps there's some legitimacy to the argument that we should keep our guard up no matter where we are, no matter what we do. Perhaps we should leave our Blackberries and our iPhones in the car and actually pay attention more to our surroundings. That's probably always good advice.
Well, the conversation will continue on this. Wendy, thank you for being here and spending a few minutes with us. It's good to talk about these things, not only talking with your children, but with the adults. Like, everybody just try to figure out what happened and not let this happen again.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate you being here. All right, still ahead on